The Futurians, time-traveling terrorists of the 22nd century, possessed a bold plan to remove Godzilla from history. Sadly, a poor comprehension of time travel from the writers of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah kinda ruined Futurian schemes before they were even filmed. Which begs the question, what if the effects of the time travel were not arbitrary and Godzilla was truly erased from time itself? What if the Futurian plan to remove Godzilla from history worked? As always, a quick note before we dive into the what if. For reference, I'm going to be using time travel mechanics similar but not exactly matching the Back to the Future series, which allows for alterations to the time stream without any fixed points like the Terminator franchise, or what Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah sort of shakily implies with history always having a Godzilla. What this essentially means is everything forward of that point that changes will be rewritten in the time stream. The big difference I want to make though with my time travel rules is that when a time alteration occurs, there is no chance for the time travelers to be erased from history due to said change. To clearly demonstrate my reasoning behind this is, imagine you were playing Pokemon. You have a level 100 Pikachu and you trade it to the Nintendo-owned Pokebank. You start a new playthrough, pick your starter, and you trade the level 100 Pikachu back. Erasing that original save doesn't mean the Pikachu vanishes, and that's the logic I'll be taking into this what if. With our time travel mechanics set in stone, I should note that all events prior to Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, so everything in the films Godzilla in 1984 and in Godzilla vs. Biollante, remain absolutely unchanged. With all the prologue out of the way, let's dive in. Our story starts just as it did in the film. The Futurians arrive in Japan, kill the crews of 2 helicopters for absolutely no reason, like, what was the point of that again? And then peacefully sit down to discuss why they have arrived. They offer to remove Godzilla from history, to which the Japanese government happily agrees. Because I guess if Hannibal Lecter is at your door and he offers to take out Stalin, it's a hard offer to refuse, again, even though you're dealing with killers. So Japan sends the writer Kusuke Terasawa, Professor Mazaki, and Miki Sayagusa, while the Futurians send M11 and Emmy back to the year 1944. Why the Futurians didn't just go back themselves from the start, especially since they planned to betray Japan the whole time, I'll leave up to you. But in the end, the Godzillasaurus is successfully removed from Lagos Island, while a few Dorats are left behind. The group returns to the present, and this time, well, time does change. When Mickey returns to the Self-Defense Force, she finds absolutely no trace of the modern Godzilla. There is only references to the original Godzilla attack in 1954. Godzilla never reappeared in 1984, meaning the thousands which died in Tokyo have seemingly returned to life with no ill effects. Outside of Mickey's knowledge, I should also point out that there is no conflict over the G cells, so Biollante is also wiped, and the events of Godzilla vs. Biollante just don't happen. This is very much a Japan that has not seen any conflict or trauma since 1954. But while Mickey is freaking out over the other her, M11 and Emmy attempt to find their companions. Problem is, there is no trace of the Futurians anywhere. Wilson, Grenchko, the androids, every trace of Emmy's partners in temporal crime have vanished. Why? Well, like a stream, they were essentially washed away when the group of time travelers made their initial change. Now, theoretically, another group of Futurians could come back to the year 1992 to subjugate Japan, but with the modern Godzilla gone, I think Japan's history would look far, far different and more akin to our own. And for this explanation, I'm going to need to put a bit of a spotlight on when Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was created. Filmed and released in the year 1991, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah reflected the national and worldwide belief that Japan was on its way to become an economic and political superpower, one that would eventually even eclipse the United States. But this all changed after the Japanese housing bubble burst in 1992, resulting in a decade of economic turmoil which thoroughly killed those lofty beliefs. Now, obviously there is a difference between the real world and the fictitious universe of Godzilla, but one theory as to why such immense growth was possible in the fictitious timeline and not in the real timeline is A, they have to face Godzilla on a constant basis, but also more importantly B, that kind of like how in the Terminator series, the original Terminator kind of spawned Skynet, the Futurian tech that the Futurians used to defeat Godzilla, the Mecha-King Ghidorah, was found by the Japanese Self-Defense Force and used for their own advancements in technology. In this timeline, neither of those factors are present, so one could theorize that Japan becoming the dominant power is far, far less likely, even with everything I'll be detailing later on in this series. Thus, the Futurians never come back in time to humble and destroy Japan, which also means Mickey, Terasawa, and the Professor find variants of themselves in this timeline because those versions of the group never leave this timeline to fix the past. I should also kind of jump out now that just because two versions of characters meet does not mean that they're going to disappear, which was alluded to and said in the original film. These versions can't create a paradox because no action, conversation, or death can alter what has already occurred. So Mickey, Terasawa, and the Professor face an existential crisis. They have no money, no place to call their own, and everyone they held dear exists, but are not the exact versions of the people they once knew. While the trio come to grips with this new reality, Emmy suffers her own crisis of faith. Like in the film, she probably would have a change of heart, especially once she realized Wilson and Grenchko were gone, meaning she would need to be the one to press the Destroy Japan with King Ghidorah button, something I really can't see her willingly doing. So with an ocean's worth of regret and optimism, she reprograms M11 and recalls her time-traveling compatriots to the kids to fill them in on what was supposed to happen. She also has a new offer. With no lives to live in this time, Emmy invites all three to the future. It's not like they have anything in this 1992. For me, I think Terasawa and the Professor would agree to join Emmy while Mickey would request to stay. And it's probably then that Emmy kind of fills everyone else in on the threats that were going to happen in that original timeline. Battra, Rodan, SpaceGodzilla, Destoroyah. Creatures which should have been listed in the finished book the Futurians gave to Japan and Terasawa, along with when Godzilla died, but let's just ignore that plot hole and just say the Futurians redacted those parts. This information would surely galvanize Mickey that her decision is the correct one, and to ensure that the time is better protected, Emmy leaves M11 in the current time period, not only to assist Mickey, but also to give her a way to control King Ghidorah, who is still just chilling on Lagos Island. To be quite clear, M11 can't directly control King Ghidorah, but I'm sure he can whip up the technology or a control panel using current technology of the year 1992, so that way King Ghidorah can be controlled in some way or form. In a flash of light, Emmy, Terasawa, and the Professor vanish to the future, never to be seen again, leaving Mickey and M11 to safeguard the present. So what does Mickey want to do first? Well, she immediately wants to throw the shackles off King Ghidorah. Like, completely. Like, to allow the dragon to do anything it wishes without an undo option. To give the dragon the choice of protecting the Earth under its own free will. This might sound absolutely insane, but remember, Mickey did the exact same thing with Godzilla. She didn't want Godzilla to be controlled by other psychics, so she removed the transponder in Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla. And that was a monster that had actively killed thousands of people. In this case, Ghidorah hasn't killed a single soul. He's remained on Lagos Island for nearly 50 years, peacefully living his days. And to stress, while this is a terrible idea, who is exactly going to tell her no? Herself? Or her current timeline variant to be specific? Not likely. M11? My guess is Emmy would tell the robot to listen to Mickey. So while logically he would oppose because they each know there are threats in the near future, he can't really argue if Mickey puts her foot down here to give Ghidorah that choice. So King Ghidorah is freed with no way to control him. What now? Well, I think Ghidorah's more isolationist nature will help ensure he just stays on Lagos Island. I don't think he would exactly care to help or hurt humanity, which is terrible news because a few months if not weeks later, a certain Dark Mothra goes on the warpath. Mothra is killed because there is no Godzilla to stop Battra from killing Mothra in her larval form. The Japanese self-defense force is woefully unprepared, though it would be neat to see the Super X deployed and try to stop the bug. A cool fight that ultimately would result in the mech getting obliterated. Now, King Ghidorah or Rodan, Heisei for that matter, could eventually intervene, but again, why would they? So long as Battra stays away from their island, each of them would just keep to themselves, no matter how much the Mickeys may plead. And as the chaos builds, with people hiding underground, one can't throw out the possibility of Destoroyah getting released, which would just ensure humanity's destruction at this point. So, in a twist I did not see coming, Mickey would ultimately end up causing the end of the world because her views on monsters are basically libertarian, aka who needs regulation or oversight on these things, even though they can cause mass damage. Now, there is a bright side to this dark future, which is Emmy, Terasawa, and the Professor would see the results of this dark future and come back to immediately tell Mickey not to do what she did. So ultimately this future wouldn't come to pass, but it is still extremely funny to me that Mickey is the one that causes this dark timeline. But let's avoid Mickey's dark future and just say that Emmy gave M11 a bit more backbone and Mickey isn't, so tied to giving King Ghidorah total free will. A compromise is formed where M11 agrees to remove the mental shackles off the dragon during peacetime, allowing it to have free reign so long as it doesn't attack humanity. Mickey would ultimately agree to this, but I think she would request one thing from her mechanical companion. But I'll touch on that in the next part. For now, again, to the events of Godzilla and Mothra Battle for Earth. A meteor strikes the Earth. Mickey Prime, what I'll refer to the original Mickey from now on, warns the cosmos of what is to come. Battra will soon awaken, and she follows up this revelation by also telling them how she knows. While the cosmos are probably a bit peeved by the fact that space and time have been altered by humanity, they really aren't in a position to argue. They appreciate the warning, and just as Battra emerges in Japan, M11 directs King Ghidorah to protect humanity. So King Ghidorah versus Battra, who wins? Well, each are vicious when it comes to firepower, but Ghidorah proved stronger than Godzilla on numerous occasions, while Battra was roughly on par. When you factor in Ghidorah's agility advantage, while Battra just has to sit and take everything Ghidorah throws his way, it means the tanky bug will eventually be beaten back and forced to retreat. Not die, mind you, Mickey would definitely not allow that. Remember, thanks to Terasawa's book and M11's history banks, Mickey Prime knows Battra has a change of heart, so she definitely wouldn't want King Ghidorah to kill him. So when Battra returns in his Imago state, a fully transformed Mothra, King Ghidorah, and the original Super X beat some literal sense into the bug. Thus, it is Battra, not Mothra, who ventures into space to stop the impending asteroid headed towards Earth, leaving Japan in relative peace. So you might be asking, what was Mickey's condition? What does King Ghidorah think of this situation? And what does the Self-Defense Force do now that there is a resurgence of monsters? Well, stay tuned as I explore those questions and more in the second part of this What If. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, remember to like and subscribe. I'm GrayShot151, and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later.